This episode of the Ageless and Awesome podcast is sponsored by the Radiant Reset Hormone Detox Guide for Perimenopausal Women. As a woman in the modern world, our hormones are taking a battering. They're impacted by the food we eat, the toxins we're exposed to, such as when we eat out of plastic takeaway containers, or even worse, reheat food in them. Please don't do this. If you're handling FPOS receipts, filling the car with fuel, eating non-organic produce that hasn't been washed effectively, plus so much more things add to our toxic load every day. Even though our bodies are designed to effectively manage toxins, they haven't evolved as quickly as our toxic world has, unfortunately. So our body does need support. Symptoms such as stubborn weight gain, fatigue, disrupted periods, irritability, and gut health issues can be a sign that you'd benefit from a gentle detox. And that's why I developed the Radiant Reset Hormone Detox Guide for Perimenopausal Women. This free guide has an abundance of information to get you started on your very own DIY detox. And if you'd like to upgrade to VIP, it's only $47 for a limited time. I used to sell this program for $247. The upgrade gives you the recipes, including plenty of plant-based options, the meal planner, the shopping list template, the video workshop, and so much more. Click the link in the show notes to learn more now. Take care of your hormones. They are a critical part of your health as a woman. Hi, I'm Susie Garden, and this is the Ageless and Awesome podcast. I'm an age-defying naturopath and clinical nutritionist, and I'm here to bust myths around women's health and aging so that you can be ageless and awesome in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. The Ageless and Awesome podcast is dedicated to helping women through perimenopause and menopause with great health, a positive mindset, and outrageous confidence. Hit subscribe or follow now, and let's get started. Hello, gorgeous one, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ageless and Awesome podcast. This week, I'm going to talk about the concept of a sleep divorce. Have you heard this term? I think I probably only heard about it last year, to be honest, and now I'm hearing more and more people mention this term. But what is a sleep divorce? And are you in a sleep divorce situation? Okay, let's get into it. So the research tells us, yes, there's research on this. The research tells us that around 2% of adults are in a sleep divorce. And I guess generally the purpose of this is to improve the sleep of either one or both or all partners. So let's have a look at it. I know if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that I've spoken quite a bit about my own love-hate relationship with sleep. And I have to admit, on the odd occasion when my husband and I have not shared the same bed, and generally that's because of either one of us is sick. I'm a bit of a germphobe, so if one of us is sick, then we sleep in separate beds. And also if something generally is going on with our dogs. We've had a lot of storms in southeast Queensland over the past week or so, and one of my dogs gets very, very anxious with storms, and so one of us has to basically take her into another room. Otherwise, none of us are going to get any sleep. So I don't know that I'd really call that a sleep divorce because it's so short term, but this is something about this situation is that it doesn't actually have to be long term to be considered a sleep divorce. So let's go into it. Why do people do it? Generally, it's for improving their sleep, and in fact, about 53% of people that were surveyed, there was a survey, I think it was about 1,500 people in the survey in the US, and just under 53% of these survey respondents who started a sleep divorce say that it improved their sleep quality. And about 1.4% of respondents have started a sleep divorce or sleeping separately from their partner and maintained it in the past year. And the research also showed that adults who've maintained a sleep divorce average about 37 minutes of sleep more each night than when they shared a bed. Now, this is I'm just reading a whole bunch of stats here and it's kind of a bit boring, but for those of you, and especially in perimenopause and menopause, if you are struggling with sleep, as I have, you will do anything to get a good night's sleep. Right? And often, and I hear this a lot from the women that come into my program, the Glow Protocol, often their partner is part of the problem with their sleep. So it's not just that they've got hormonal disruption or other things, stress, for example, or often it's the nutrition actually that's not quite right, or there's gut health issues. All of these things can cause disruption to sleep. But of course, if you have a partner that snores, for example, or if you have a partner that's a shift worker that's coming in late or getting up really early, if I've got one client, I think she said her partner gets up at like 3 or 3:45 to go to the gym. So there are many, many reasons that you may kind of consider getting a sleep divorce where you sleep in separate beds so that you can get a better sleep. And, gosh, if I could get an average of 37 minutes, it doesn't sound a lot, but when you're really struggling to sleep, an extra 37 minutes of sleep would be pretty amazing, I reckon. And the thing is, and one of the things that this research showed is that if you go into a sleep divorce with an open mind and an expectation that it may not be permanent, that you may decide that, you want to come back to sharing the bed or whatever, the good news is that, again, what this research showed is that around a quarter of people who had been in a sleep divorce ended up sharing a bed again, and mostly because they just missed each other. But when they kind of started sharing a bed again, their sleep still had improved. They were still getting, I think it was in the realm of about 10 or 15 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes more sleep than when they slept separately. And about 40% of the people that got, ended their sleep divorce said their sleep quality also improved. So there are quite a few benefits to having a sleep divorce and then even, getting back into the same bed again for sleep. And some people even responded in this survey that they chose to have sleep divorce for seasonal reasons, such as seasonal allergies, and there was one couple that was saying that there was every spring, one partner gets really bad allergies. So for about 6 weeks, they sleep separately and then they're back in the same bed again. So it can be a seasonal thing, and that still comes under that banner of having a sleep divorce. And what is really interesting is that people are now, even when they're looking at homes, whether they're renting or buying, when they're looking at homes, they're actually looking at how many rooms so that potentially they can have a sleep divorce and each partner has their own room so that they can really get that improved sleep. And we know, sleep is like one of the cornerstones of good health. Sleep is really, really important for many, many chronic illnesses, particularly for weight management. We know that there are so many things that go on in our bodies when we sleep, which is one of the really big drawbacks of perimenopause and for some menopause is the poor sleep that women are getting is actually one of the contributing factors to weight gain. And it's not because, I know that I thought as a practitioner, this is many years ago, is that the reason people who didn't sleep well had a tendency to gain weight I just thought it was because they were at the fridge. And probably because what I used to do when I couldn't sleep, and this is probably 10 years ago, I used to get up and have a piece of toast or have some yogurt or do something like that, which I now know is actually going to compound the problem because it's going to bump up my blood sugar. But they with the research that they've done with the relationship between sleep and weight gain, it's actually got nothing to do with any food intake that happens during the night, because it happens also with people that don't get up and have food in the middle of the night. So there are actually metabolic processes that go on in our bodies while we're asleep. In fact, there's more than just metabolic processes going on. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And what it can do is really impact your blood sugar. And that means that during the day, because your blood sugar is impacted, you'll probably feel hungrier, so you'll eat more. B, you're probably going to feel more tired. And the thing that many people do when they feel tired is they reach for additional food. And generally it's going to be carbs, which are not ideal if you're trying to lose weight. So there's a few issues at play. But it's a really interesting concept to me, this concept of the sleep divorce, because I feel like in the past, sleeping in separate rooms was considered basically the death knell for the relationship, right? But based on the most recent research, and this is from last year, they're actually saying that if you communicate really well, and this is the secret is communication. If you communicate really well about what the reasons are why you might want to sleep in separate rooms is important for a start, so that there's no misunderstanding between the partners. But also what's really important as a couple is to preserve the critical time that you spend together in bed before either of you falls asleep, right? So having some sort of some ritualistic almost time that you would spend together. So it's not just watching TV and then one of you goes to bed and then the other goes to bed and there's no sort of communication. So actually it's a bit similar, I guess, to a sleep routine where there's certain things that you do that tell your mind that you're going to bed and it helps you go to sleep. But yeah, if you are spending some time together in bed before either of you falls asleep, and then the person that falls asleep sort of last goes into their other room, that is seen to be one of the secrets for managing a sleep divorce successfully, so that it doesn't actually kind of damage the relationship. Sometimes another reason for a sleep divorce is because, and again, this is really important in perimenopause and menopause, is the difference in body temperatures. And I know for many women, their partner, if it's a man, often has a higher sort of, I don't want to say a high body temperature, but they're more of a hot sleeper, if you know what I mean. And so if you both have different needs in terms of the heat and the bedding that you need to keep your body temperature in the right sort of space for sleep, because, you need to be cool. You need to drop the body temperature a little bit in order to go to sleep. And particularly in perimenopause and menopause, obviously, there can be that whole disruption that goes on during the night with the hot flushes and with night sweats and things like that. And so there's something called the Scandinavian sleep method. And I've seen this from a few different sources. So it does seem to be a thing, that this Scandinavian sleep method. I actually thought it was something made up. But yeah, this is something that I'm going to explain now, the Scandinavian sleep method. Because, if you've got, and I think the stats are something like 1 in 3 Americans report that their partner negatively affects their sleep. And there can be many, many reasons, as I've already outlined in this pod already. Or sometimes it's even as simple as someone just keeps hogging the doona, so you're left with no covering, and you're getting too cold. So the Scandinavian sleep method, I love that. I think it's the alliteration that I really love. But essentially what it is instead of just sharing a single blanket or a doona or whatever it is that you use at night, you and your partner each have your own. So it's not like the bed's made up with two separate sheets and things so you're completely separated. It's just that one of you has a doona. Maybe you have a thicker doona or a thicker blanket than the other partner. And generally it works best if you have a larger bed. It can work on a queen, but it's apparently much better, as you can imagine, if you had a king size bed and then you use either a single or a double size, whether it's a blanket or whether it's a doona or whatever, at the level of thickness that you want. So if you want a heavier one, you can do that. I pretty much, when I was reflecting and thinking about this for this topic for this podcast episode, I think I'm in a situation where I'm probably using some of these principles because I have a weighted blanket, which I've talked about before, and my husband hates it. He does not want that at all. So I absolutely love my weighted blanket, and it's probably, I don't know what, it isn't, you don't kind of buy them as being for a single or a double bed. It just comes as a size. So I guess it covers up more than kind of half of our bed, but when I'm actually in it, it cocoons me. So it's feels like I'm in my own little cocoon. And I think it's a very similar kind of experience of this Scandinavian sleep strategy in that I've got the weighted blanket, but we do have the same kind of coverlet or doona going over both of us, but I'm in a little cocoon because I've got my weighted blanket on. And that means and I've noticed this, when he's moving around in the bed, I don't feel any of that movement of the covers. Whereas at times I do go from, sometimes I'll have a month or two where I don't use that weighted blanket. And it's really noticeable to me that, when he rolls over or whatever. So I never really thought about it that much before. But when I think about it, this is probably how it feels to be in using the Scandinavian sleep method, is that you have your own blanket or doona. When you move, you're not disturbing the other person. And it definitely helps improve sleep because if you're a light sleeper, you're not going to be woken by that movement. So it was really interesting to me that the Scandinavian sleep method, which apparently gets used in places like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, other parts of Europe, apparently it's very, very common to do this. But, it is, I think, maybe if you're considering a sleep divorce, maybe consider the Scandinavian sleep method and try that because it definitely, in my experience, reduces the amount of movement that you're feeling from the other person in the bed, so you're not getting woken up as much. And it might be, if you're just not ready for the sleep divorce, I've got to say I have loved the nights that we've slept in separate beds, just to have that bed to yourself and not have any of that extra kind of noise. And I used to travel a lot for work, so I was away almost every week for a few nights when I was in corporate land, and that I did love sleeping in the hotel beds on my own. So I definitely think I'm kind of recreating that a little bit in the way the bed's set up at the moment. But perhaps for yourself, if you don't use a weighted blanket and you don't really need one, maybe having the two separate doonas or blankets or whatever might be something you could consider, or maybe a sleep divorce is for you. Again, if you're going to approach that with your partner, obviously you might want to just be very considerate with your language so that they don't think, it's a permanent kind of, relocation because of relationship issues. Obviously, if there are, then that's a different scenario. But this is, if it's just purely for sleep, then I think why not give it a go, because we know that it is so, so important for our health to get a good night's sleep frequently. So I hope that may have been helpful for some of you. For some of you, it might have gone, boring. But for those of us that really struggle with sleep, any little things, any incremental strategies that you can implement that might give you just that extra depth of sleep, that improved quality of sleep, that improved length of sleep, that ability to get back to sleep more easily once you wake, particularly if you're doing a regular 3 a.m. wake up like I used to do, then any kind of small improvement is going to make a world of difference. So if you know someone that's struggling with sleep, feel free to share this episode with them. I grow by word of mouth, so I would absolutely love that. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll be back on Thursday with Q&A. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Ageless and Awesome podcast. If you liked today's episode, please make sure you click the little plus button if you're on Apple Podcasts or the follow button if you're on Spotify so that you get each new episode delivered to you every week. If you like free stuff, then head to the show notes and click the link to receive my free Radiant Reset Hormone Detox Guide for perimenopausal women. Or if you'd like to continue the discussion, head over to Instagram and DM me at Susie Garden Wellness. I'd love to connect with you.